Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. You're watching Global Times Pakistan and I'm Haider Hayat Khan. Viewers, Pakistan a few days back for the first time witnessed a successful no confidence motion against an elected Prime Minister Imran Khan. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan blamed US of the conspiracy behind this no trust motion, and one of the major reasons which he is mentioning is the recent shift in Russia-Pakistan relations. Now to discuss this situation, I'm joined by a very renowned and seasoned journalist from Russia, Oksana Baiko, who is associated with RT. Oksana, thank you very much for your time. How are you?
Thank you for your invitation. I'm great, thank you, and I'm very honored to be with you. Thanks.
Thank you. Oksana, you were here in Pakistan for Islamabad Security Dialogue, and I'm sure you're quite aware of all what happened in Pakistan in the recent days. As a journalist, what do you think about all what happened in Pakistan?
Well, I'm not sure my brain is big enough to think about all that happened in Pakistan, but I can tell you that obviously I was surprised by the amount of attention the Russian media are paying to that. I'm surprised by the amount of attention Turkish media and Western media are paying to that. And when I say I'm surprised, well, I'm not really surprised. I mean, I understand why they're paying so much attention, but I think it speaks to the fact that Pakistan has taken a certain position on the continent and in the world. And it's an important country. And what happens in that country has not only regional, but I also think global implications. And I don't want to take political sides. I'm not knowledgeable enough. And besides, I'm, who I am to, to pass any judgments. But I do think that what's happening in Pakistan is in a sense very similar to what's happening in the world. And I'm sure those things are interrelated, and perhaps we can talk about that in more detail.
Okay, how is Russia basically looking all what is happening in Pakistan, specifically when former Prime Minister Imran Khan said that Russia and Pakistan, close relations between Russia and Pakistan is one of the reasons why US planned this conspiracy against it?
Well, I have to start with the Russian foreign policy posture. It's a very important and time-honored tradition, both for the Soviet and for the Russian diplomacy, not to take sides explicitly. Russia will work with any leader of any country, regardless of whether it likes it or not. And that was also, one of the hallmarks of the Russian policy, even in its near abroad. I know that people from far abroad may think that Russia tries to install its own leaders. That's actually not the case. That's the American projection. This is how Americans operate. They try to establish favorable figures for them. For us, it's more about whoever represents the country, we take it for granted. So we take it for granted that the people of Pakistan or any other country, the collective psyche will produce a leader that we have to deal with it, rather than trying to engineer that, favorable conditions for ourselves from within. Having said that, I think developing relations with Pakistan was important and still is important for Russia. I mean, Russia maintained ties not only with Imran Khan, but also with the leaders before him. And that speaks to the deep understanding here in Russia of the strategic position of your country, both as an access to China, as well as a player that could play a vital role in securing Afghanistan. I think we are all very keenly aware of the fact that this black hole in the middle of the continent, this hole of insecurity, is harming us all. And it is also pretty clear that Pakistani's cooperation and stability and development is beneficial for us as a country that spans both Europe and Asia, and that has a vital stake in the security and stability of Central Asia. And for that, we need stable Pakistan, and whoever can provide that, is a good enough player for Moscow.
So, keeping in mind the history of the Sharifs, which are again the ruler of Pakistan, what do you think? Will Russia and Pakistan come more closer, or do you think that Pakistan will shift towards America again?
I'm not sure. I think even the new leadership already said that they are eager to maintain their relations with China. And I think the Sharif family was the one who signed up to the Belt and Road Initiative. So, if you were to ask for my analytical opinion, I think they have no chance but stay in ties with China. Sure, even under Imran Khan, Pakistan, I think at least in your new national security doctrine, it is spelled out that you want to have, equal, mutually beneficial relationship with all the players, including the United States. And the same goes, by the way, for Russia. Russia is not antithetical to the United States. We want to have good ties with them. We understand how beneficial it could be in terms of technology, synergies, global cooperation, financial system, etc. But what is unacceptable to Russia, and I think what was unacceptable to Prime Minister Han, is a subservient position, the need to bow to another country, to another authority. And by doing this, at least that's how it's perceived here in Russia, by doing it, essentially abandoning who you are as a people. Russia operates on the presumption that not everybody may like us, not everybody may like our history or what we represent today in the world, but we accept ourselves as we are. And we have our own internal sense of our destiny, of how we want to be developed. And we want cooperation from the outside, but we don't need an outside diktat, first and foremost, because we don't believe that the Americans know us better than we are. And I think the same perhaps goes for Pakistan. And I'm pretty sure that the situation in the world, the geopolitical trends in the world are such that, strict alliance with just one power is no longer feasible. Even Israel, Israel has invested a lot of its security in the United States, but even Israel cannot afford to be aligned only with Washington. It's developing ties with Arab countries and with Russia and many other players. So I'm sure to some extent it would be the same for Pakistan. There will be some continuity, but the focus, the emphasis will perhaps be different.
Sunny, you met Prime Minister Imran Khan, you interviewed him. Did he share anything with you that he is being pressurized by the Americans not to visit Russia or not to come close to Russia?
Well, he didn't tell me specifically about that, even though I asked him whether it was a politically wise decision to go to Moscow at a time when the pressure or the tensions between Russia and the West reached such a peak. And he said that he was determined to do that for the sake of his own country. He was not playing a Russian puppet or an American puppet. He was pursuing his country's national interest. And I think objectively, Pakistan has something to gain from the relationship with Russia, because Russia is a huge country. It is interested in developing ties with Southeast Asia. Pakistan could gain a lot as a transit country for pipelines, for the transit of energy, as well as trade, tourism. There's a great interest, for example, in Russia in Himalayas. So I think that in itself could be a major boost for tourism, because your country is not well known here, but as a Russian, having visited Pakistan, I think there's a great potential there. Having said that, I've read what Prime Minister Han said about pressure being applied to him. And to be honest with you, I believe him. At least I wouldn't be surprised to find out that this was indeed the case, because this is the way how Americans operate. For some reason, they believe that if you subject somebody to extra pressure, if you try to humiliate somebody, even behind closed doors, that somehow it's gonna work. And I simply don't think that, I don't think it's an effective way of doing politics. They tried to do the same with the Chinese. It didn't work. They tried to do the same with the Russians. It didn't work. So I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to do the same thing to Prime Minister Imran Khan, and it didn't work either.
So, Oksana, Prime Minister Khan visited Russia right before Russia attacked Ukraine.
Well, it was actually the same very day. I felt a lot of sympathies for him because he was in the Kremlin on the day that Putin announced that military operation in Ukraine.
So how do you think about the timing of that visit? Because Pakistan was criticized that Pakistan should not visit Russia because Russia is going into a conflict with Ukraine.
But I think, you need to see, I mean, I don't know how was it viewed in the Prime Minister's office. I mean, you will have to ask them for their rationale. As far as I'm concerned, I think this conflict is viewed in Russia as not just a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I mean, we actually believe that Ukrainians are, very close peoples to us, even though we respect their sovereignty. What Russia was concerned about is the constant arming and pumping of Ukraine with weaponry, offensive weaponry, which was posing an existential security threat for Russia. And so in this regard, what is happening in Ukraine is a military operation to neutralize that military capacity of Ukraine. We, as far as I'm concerned, at least, we don't want to rule them. We don't want to incorporate them into Russia. They will remain a sovereign country free to pursue their own interests with whomever they want to pursue them, on the condition that they don't present an existential danger for us, and that I'm sorry for being rude, but that they don't prostitute their land to present an existential threat to us. That was Russia's biggest concern. And I think that was what Putin was trying to neutralize by authorizing this military operation. I think from my interview with Imran Khan and from what I have read about Pakistan's foreign policy, by and large, this is a similar view, that no one's security should be ensured or enhanced at the cost to another power, to your neighbor, what have you. In Pakistan, you guys talk a lot about mutual security, about inclusive security, about trying to solve your issues, not at the sort of, win or lose framework, but more with an understanding that your gain today or the loss of your neighbor will come back to hurt you. You need to solve these issues with a longer term perspective. So in that sense, I think, Pakistan, Russia, China, even India, they look at those issues similarly. Obviously, they approach it from different vantage points. And we were not expecting here in Russia that, Imran Khan would support this operation. Obviously, why should he? I mean, war is, any military operation is the worst outcome possible. We deplore this war ourselves. Most of us have relatives. And we get on the phones every night with them. And yeah, so it's, what I'm trying to say is that his visit, I think, was aimed at bilateral ties, and those bilateral ties remain regardless of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. For us, Pakistan is a separate entity, a separate value. It's woven into the broader Asian relationship. And I think it also speaks to the fact that Putin was able to receive Imran Khan on that very day when he had to deal with a lot of very, very pressing frontline news, also speaks to the importance that he gives to the relationship with this country.
Now let's move towards Afghanistan. I'll just ask one question. What do you think, why Pakistan, Russia, and China have not accepted the current Afghan leadership and the current Afghan government? And secondly, what do you think, how can these three countries play their positive role for the betterment of Afghanistan?
Well, I'm not quite sure with your formulation that they haven't accepted. I mean, I know that they haven't gone onto the pulpit and pronounced that, we are now brothers forever. But I think, they're working on the ground in Afghanistan. I know for a fact that we have a good embassy there. It's pretty active. It's trying to do its best in facilitating whatever it needs to be facilitated with the current authorities, but with the understanding that the fate of the Afghan people should be in the hands of the Afghan people. So many foreign powers have tried to, remake Afghanistan in their image, including, I have to say, the Soviet Union, and it always failed. So at this point of time, I think, at least in Russia, there is a realization that you definitely cannot force feed Afghanis anything from the outside, and the effort, the underground effort, not very publicized effort, but still an effort to support whatever consolidating processes that are happening there.
And lastly, keeping in view the history of Russia and Pakistan relations, what do you think? How can these two countries have better relations in the future?
I think it goes not only for Russia and Pakistan, but pretty much for any bilateral relationship. If countries can mind their national interest, I'm absolutely convinced that it's easier for them to come to not even a compromise, but a mutually agreeable synthesis of those interests than if they try to be part of the bloc. I mean, Russia has suffered a lot from the bloc mentality. We participated historically. We've also played a major role in one security bloc. And now I think our understanding, our posture in the world is such that we want to understand what the other player wants. We want to respect those interests. We want to see where we disagree. And if we are honest and respectful of one another, we can always find the middle ground that serves both actors. That's pretty simple. I mean, to some extent, it's a very Asian philosophy, respect yourself, respect your neighbor, and, that will produce a mutually agreeable outcome rather than trying to play this, game of winning and losing. The Americans like to talk about this non-zero-sum mentality when both sides get something, but at the end of the day, they always play zero-sum games. This is not what Russian civilization or Russian philosophy is about, and I know for a fact that this is not what Chinese or Pakistani sort of deep cultural understanding is about. When I came to Pakistan, I met a lot of grace. People treat me with a lot of kindness, with a lot of respect. Nobody was trying to tell me how I should live my life differently, from a get-go. And when you first allow your partner, respect and appreciation of who they are as a people, I think everything flows from there. It's basic human psychology. And if we can bring that back into diplomacy and foreign policy, I think it would not be difficult to reach good results.
Thank you very much, Oksana, for your time. Viewers, this is all from today. Keep watching Global Times Pakistan.